Hey guys, what's up? It is week 420. yeah. Alright, let's hop into the reviews. The first one up is 88 Films from the Shaw Brothers line here. This is from 1971, but not released until 1975. Made in 1971, of course, and this is Lady of the Law. So it says Lole in it, who is in a million Shaw Brothers movies, a bunch of movies, classic Shaw Brothers actor. So basically what we have here in the very beginning, we have this guy traveling. He's pretty much well-respected individual. He is guarding this treasure. A group of bandits come. He's actually protecting, I can't remember exactly who he's protecting somewhat, but a group of bandits come, and they tell him, you must basically give these people up or we're going to murder your son. He doesn't really have a choice, so he does it. He makes him look incredibly guilty, so he is then killed. And they plan on killing his son as well, because these people feel like they were wronged, although, come to find out, these awful people were behind the whole entire kind of thing like that. So, basically, a young girl saves his life, who is the daughter of kind of the lady of the law. And so he owes his life to this young girl. He ends up having to live with the people who caused his father all this, all the problems and everything like that, and were originally going to kill him. And he's treated like crap. A classic Shaw Brothers story we've seen a million times, right? They train. He trains in secret. That's Lole as he grows up. But it's just a matter of time before the kind of master or whatever has his son grown up, and he turns out to be a horrible monster. He's kind of going around and raping any women that he feels fit, and he ends up raping somebody who's got some power and kills his concubine at the same time. So they're scrambling to blame this crime on, and of course they're going to blame it on Lole, who they do not like. But he is also a secret super martial artist, right? So the Lady of the Law, now grown up, comes back with the guidance of her mother, and is looking to catch Lole. But we're going to have to figure out, is he going to, prove his innocence? Or are the bad guys going to get their just desserts? Yeah, this reminds me of a couple other Shaw Brothers flicks. There's a couple of those ones, right? One that I watched a couple weeks ago where essentially the mother goes out of her way completely to prove her son's innocence, although he's just scummy. That's definitely a theme here, is the rich or the people in charge are actually the awful people, and some of the people that, they set up all these things like that. But this one's decent. It's not actually amazing to me. Has some decent fight scenes. I like the lead performance from Lole. I like the lead performance of, the Lady of the Law. But he obviously, there's a love kind of thing going on there because she saved him when he was so young. But yeah, everything comes out. It's not incredibly violent like a lot of the other Shaw Brother movies where we have these big, tremendous, violent set pieces or something like that. And David West, I think, is the commentator on here. He in fact mentions that. He said if this was made by like a Chiang at the very end, there'd be a bloodbath. Here instead, there's actually some more like law and order, I guess, if you'd say, as much law or order as there can be in this one. This one is fairly standard, a fairly decent one because it does have kind of a female heroine in there, which I think is kind of cool. But overall, Lady of the Law, it doesn't really stand out as a Shaw Brothers movie. It looks great and sounds great, and I do enjoy it. And like I said, Lole is cool as well. But it's fairly standard, which is not a bad thing when it comes to Shaw. They have so many movies. But also don't be confused with Lady with the Sword. But yeah, this is number 47 in their collection. But yeah, like I said, it has a commentary by David West. And it's pretty good commentary. It talks about how they kind of situated the lead actress in here with other actresses and stuff like that earlier in her career to kind of get her more exposure and kind of shift over that popularity, and goes into all those kind of things like that. Talks about all the players in here, and there's plenty, a lot of recognizable faces. But yeah, that is Lady of the Law. Decent stuff. Okay, the last in the Bullets and Betrayals Japanese set from Arrow Video is XX Beautiful Hunter. This is the second in the series. This was based on a book, and they kind of go over the special features and stuff like that, and they talk about the big kind of, huge La Femme Nikita kind of assassin, and also the thrillers of the time, like Basic Instinct, causing this huge kind of stir in world cinema. So a lot of like Hong Kong movies would do it. Like what was the Black Cat was one that they had, and there's a bunch of other ones like that. So the Japanese V Cinema kind of wanted to hop on the bandwagon. This is based off a book called, Shen, who is the lead character in here. So in the very beginning of the film, we have this kind of religious organization, this religious kind of cult, and they bring in this, they're a Christian cult though, so there's plenty of religious, Christian iconography to be in this film, similar to, the female Scorpion film that was in the box set as well. So she is told that she has to kill this older man, this young girl. She kills him in the name of the church, and we kind of fast forward, and she is now a badass assassin, and she's kind of hired to take out, do the church's dirty work, kills a bunch of people, but she's just kills completely. She knows no real, pleasures or anything in life. So in the very beginning of the film, she kills a whole group of gangsters quickly, and a bunch of them. But a photographer gets a picture of her and kind of escapes. But of course, this organization realizes that he did, and they start to come after him. And he is a little bit more smarter, starts to kind of, beg for his life, and something kind of stirs in her, a sexual kind of emotion as he, falls on his ground and accidentally grabs her breast and all that kind of stuff like that. And they start this weird kind of relationship. He's kind of a middle-aged guy. That's always that thing. Beautiful young woman, middle-aged guy, right? It's almost like, but it makes sense to a certain extent because she's never had any experiences like this, so she can't be naive in that aspect. But they start a relationship, but the organization's not going to let them go that easy. So what happens is kind of they're tracking her and them, and it's up to them to try to stand out and fight back against these people. The main bad guy from the organization is like this blind guy. He's really creepy. He's a good performance, a good creep in this one. And I love the ending. I think the ending's excellent. How it just kind of ends the way it ends, I think is perfect for the movie. But XX Beautiful Hunter, solid one in the Bullets and Betrayal set. I think it's well worth watching. As far as the special features on this one, we have newly filmed introduction by Japanese film critic. Yeah, not cricket, okay? Masaki Tanioka, and The Sacred and the Profane, the newly filmed interview with screenwriter Hiroshi Takahashi. And he talks about working with the director, and he seems to be a genuine fan, and he worked on a bunch of other stuff later down the line. Interesting guy for sure. Seems incredibly respectful. And they brought back to Sleaze a brand new video essay on XX Beautiful Hunter by critic and Japanese cinema expert Patrick Messias, who has been on a couple of these releases. Was he on the Yokai release, if I'm not mistaken? Possibly. But yeah, he's a smart guy, interesting guy. Talks about all the thrillers that kind of got the kind of motion going for Japan to kind of start throwing their, name in the bag and everything like that to make a bunch of these things like that. But overall, great set. Really enjoyed it. Very easy watches. So the entire set here is, where do we start? Crime Hunter, Bullets of Rage, excellent. That's with Neo Shinpira, Zoom Goes the Bullet. We also have Burning Dog, Female Prisoner, Scorpion Death Threat, Stranger and Carlos, The Hitman, Blood Smells Like Roses, Danger Point, The Road to Hell, and XX Beautiful Hunter. Let me think. My favorite ones in this set, I'm going to have to go Crime Hunter, Bullets of Rage. I think that one's excellent. Danger Point, The Road to Hell. I like that one quite a bit as well. Carlos, I think, is top notch, and Female Prisoner, Scorpion Death Threat. I think those ones are my top in here, but great set. Really love when they do these kind of sets, the Japanese sets and all that kind of stuff like that. Arrow does a pretty good job, and these are a lot of movies that, maybe somebody wouldn't take a dive on one of them, or they love one of them, so they buy the set and they realize they have 2-3 more favorites in there as well. So yeah, great set. All right, we're going to jump into another box set here, and this is Terror in the Fog, the Wallace Crimi films at CCC, which did all the Mabuza films and the Mabuza set. I like these little slips that Eureka Films does for the releases here. How you can slide it over and still have all the information. Really cool, nice hard box on there. And we have basically 5 titles in here. We get a bonus title, The Phantom of Soho. But the first one here is The Curse of the Yellow Snake. Now, the history of these Crimi movies is basically they have a little featurette on there. I do know a little bit about Krimis. I'm not a huge expert or anything like that, but obviously inspired the Giallo. So as we look, the Agatha Christie kind of paperbacks and stuff like that, the murder mysteries, Edgar Wallace was one of those big names. In Germany, they kind of ended up being called Krimis, which means kind of like crime, from my understanding, similar to the Yellow, which is Giallo in Italy, the paperback books that are yellow. All this stuff is definitely early inspirations to, the Giallo and then the slasher, all that kind of stuff, trajectory of history of horror and what came before it. has film noir touches, of course, and stuff like that, spy touches, Mabuza touches, all that kind of stuff, especially in The Curse of the Yellow Snake, which is the first one in here. This is the only story in here that's actually written by Edgar Wallace, because later on, as all the special features explain, a lot of these companies, Rialto was like the big one that had the Edgar Wallace movies, but CCC had, I think, his son, Brian Edgar Wallace, write a bunch of the stuff so they could have that Wallace name on there, Edgar Wallace name on there. But The Curse of the Yellow Snake was actually written by Edgar Wallace himself, so this is the only one, I think, in the set, according to the commentaries and stuff like that. So The Curse of the Yellow Snake. This one, I'm not trying to be rude or anything right off the bat. This one didn't do much for me because the story is kind of like a rather dull story for me. It was written in the 20s, and that doesn't mean it's bad now. It's just not a timeless story. It's a very dated story with a lot of the Asian kind of like Orient kind of stuff going on in here. The mysterious, Orient or Asian kind of culture in these movies like that. They always had that deal. So there's always a lot of like stereotypes, which are products of their time. But essentially what we have here is a half Asian, half kind of white guy who really wants to get this kind of special reptile idol, because with it he can kind of control the entirety of the world, or Asia to a certain point. So it definitely has like the kind of, feels very spy bondish and that kind of element. And of course there's going to be a bunch of people that are trying to stop him, and he has kind of his own cult that wears these hooded things. Werner Peters is in here as a good role, probably my favorite role in the whole movie. But there's a couple other things that are completely ridiculous. There's an added element of, a comedy character, that's overdone. He's an antique dealer, so he's always looking into stuff, and it's just overly ridiculous. This one feels a tad bit repetitive, a tad bit tedious. The Asian makeup, we're no strangers to that when you get back to the old days. They had like the Charlie Chan movies or the Fu Manchu movies. Christopher Lee did it. Everybody did it. But it's still quite obviously cheesy and a kind of a cringe product of its time, but it is what it is. It's not, none of this stuff really bothers me to like lower the score of a movie or anything. I just think this one is a little bit more tedious than a lot of the other ones in this kind of vein or anything like that. It has a lot less, like, I guess you'd say, some of the cremies and stuff like that have like gothic elements and stuff, which are more my jam, more my kind of element here, or like even some film noir stuff here. This is more so kind of feels like a spy kind of deal with like a lot of comedy elements, so it kind of just not really made for me, to be honest. But it doesn't mean it's terrible or anything. It looks fantastic. The cinematography's great. The sound was pretty good. It's in English or German, you can choose. And I'm impressed how well these look for being low-budget movies at the time. But as far as the special features are concerned, they're all 2K restorations. We also get The Phantom of Soho, which is a bonus. I don't think it's on this disc, so I did not get a chance to watch that one yet. It'll probably be next week. But we have a new introduction to each film by genre film expert, Video Watchdog founder Tim Lucas. Knows a lot about these movies. He's pretty concise. I think one opening is 10 minutes, one opening is 5 or so. New audio commentaries on The Curse of the Yellow Snake and The Phantom of Soho by Kim Newman and Barry Forshaw. Kim Newman and Barry Forshaw are really good at this sort of thing. They joke back and forth and they have fun. They do obviously have some love for the film, but they do have a couple jokes in here as well. And then the other stuff is new commentaries for that kind of stuff. Oh, we do have Introduction to Krimi and everything like that. That's just on this disc. They put all the features in the back here, so I'm kind of mixing them up in my head and everything like that. But The Curse of the Yellow Snake, it's not necessarily for me. The other film on this first disc, this 4-disc here, is much better. Okay, the next one here in our Terror in the Fog set is, at least if you can see that, you'll see it in the thing, is The Strangler of Blackmoor Castle. Great title here. And I don't think this one was actually based on a book, although I think it took like pieces from that and everything like that, is my understanding from the special features. But The Stranger of Blackmoor Castle is definitely more up my alley, that kind of deal. We are introduced to a slew of characters throughout this one, and there's definitely a mystery angle to it, where like we have this killer with a missing finger. There's also a missing finger kind of deal in The Curse of the Yellow Snake as well. But the Strangler has a missing finger, and in the very beginning he strangles somebody kind of in the woods brutally, and there is an M or a W written on the character's forehead. So of course people are investigating that are involved with this. There's a lot of different players involved, including people that owe this person money. The guy who owns this castle is renting out rooms here to kind of pay for things, and we realize he's in a bad financial spot. He's borrowing money from his, I think it's his niece or something along those lines, who does not yet inherited it, and he's not really supposed to do that, so he's in a bind. There's also this whole element of these like hidden jewels, so we're imagining that the killer is after these hidden diamonds or whatever that have possibly been stolen, and there's kind of a caretaker that works there that is a diamond cannon cutter who's completely insane. So a lot of red herrings, a lot of characters who the possible Strangler can be. The one thing that surprised me, I mean, and here is, it's pretty gruesome for the early 60s. Harald Reinl directed this film. He did, I think, 2 or 3 of the Mabuza movies that they put out from the 60s. So he's a solid director, and I've seen other work from him before. He's one of the big names. Him and Alfred Vollmer. And I'm not super familiar, but like these directors, these krimis. But those are the 2 big names that I've seen a lot of the movies pop up and list and everything, and going through them, and seen a couple of them and stuff like that when you're looking at the 60s stuff. A lot of this German stuff has never got good releases in the States, or English-friendly stuff. So it's films I'm familiar with just by title, to a certain extent. But seeing them finally is really cool. So it's more gruesome than you'd expect. Somebody's decapitated, the strangulations and everything like that. There's a couple kind of hammy fight scenes that are decent. They're not great. I never really found it in the 60s and 70s that Germany was really the guys for like choreographing fights and everything like that. Obviously there's other countries that are much better at that kind of stuff, but and a lot of times the 60s is kind of a cheesy thing for like hand-to-hand combat in movies in general. I like this one. I think it's interesting. I would have never, they talk about in the commentary, they're just like, there's no way you would have guessed who the actual killer is, and I wouldn't have. I couldn't have. There's no way I could have. There's about a half a dozen to 10 characters, several characters that you would guess who the killers are. So it's got a decent mystery. It's got decent little side characters and everything like that. It never goes full goofy comedic like the Curse of the Yellow Snake, but it does have its kind of comic character with a giant curly mustache who's also a red herring, who hangs out with like the young kid who's walking around the grounds and everything like that. But as far as the special features, I mentioned this has a commentary by Kevin Loynes and Jonathan Rigby, which was really good, and they actually pointed something out to me. There's a movie where one of the actresses in here pops up in it, Dark Echoes. It's listed as 1977 on Internet Movie Database, but they're saying it's 82. I know the VHS was released in 86. I cannot find anything on this damn movie. I really would probably want to watch it just for 82 just to be safe, but I'm like, where's this one? Does anybody have any information on Dark Echoes 1977, 1982, 1986? Because I don't. But that was a nice little feature on there. Always listen to the commentaries. You always learn something. And then the other stuff is on the other disc. But starting this out in the first disc, interesting enough, great features, one okay movie, one pretty good movie. But yeah, that is The Tear in the Fog, the Krimi set by Eureka. Moving forward, next week we'll have another one for you. All right, this next one here from Deaf Crocodile, which is putting out a lot of great, cool foreign movies. And this is Zerograd, a.k.a. Zero City from 1989. And this is obviously made under Soviet rule. So these movies are always kind of weird, kind of strange things. Sometimes Russian humor, Soviet humor, I've realized, is very much absurdist. From the stuff like Mystery of Carpathian Castle and anything like that. When you pop in, a lot of the Deaf Crocodile focuses on a lot of these strange Soviet movies that have these kind of absurdist kind of qualities about them. But Zerograd, I loved. I love this movie. So we have, I believe he's an engineer, and he has to travel to this small town. It's kind of like a little nobody town kind of deal. He travels here, and he wants to talk to the factory owner because they want to talk about changing the back paneling to the air conditioning to save money, yada, yada, yada. And almost immediately, it's humorous. He's in a weird place. He's a stranger in a weird place, but he keeps his cool. He's a very, he has a good composure about him, and his facial expressions throughout this are probably one of the best parts of the film. And at times he tries to correct people, but after a while, I think he realizes his fate. He realizes it's kind of useless to do it, and he just kind of looks at them like they've gone mad, and it's just hilarious. But so right away, the secretary is naked, and nobody seems to make a huge deal out of it. So that's kind of off-putting or confusing. Confusing is the real word for it. But they end up talking about the engineer being drowned, so he has to go somewhere else, and he goes to get lunch or dinner, and the cook has made a cake, even though he refuses dessert. The cook brings out, or the waiter brings out a cake that is shaped in his head exactly with his likeness, without knowing anyone. So he refuses to taste it, and the cook kills himself. This puts him into an investigation where he meets the prosecutor of the town, who's absolutely ridiculous, intense, crazy, kind of sad character. And he's thrown into this whole town's history, their politics, all these kind of weird social engagements with people, and it makes him in such an awkward situation, which is absolutely hilarious. So he kind of learns the town's history through kind of a weird museum, and at first the museum is like it's pivoting itself into like the history of important events, but it's putting themselves in it. And at first he's like, that's not what, and then he just corrected it, and he realizes it's not going to get any better. It's not going to change. And he tries his damnedest to get out of this town, but it's just not in the cards for him. And he starts meeting all these absurd characters, and he becomes a part of the town's history. He becomes a huge part. And you get the idea that maybe they do this to everyone. Maybe they incorporate all these people into it. But it turns into like the history of this town was like about a huge rock and roll revolution, which is absolutely bizarre and silly. And they play a lot of Bill Haley in the comments. I think they do Rock Around the Clock Tonight, but that pops up so much, and it becomes hilarious the more and more you hear it. But I got to give it out to the acting, especially the lead actor in here. He's a tremendous performance, and I do really like kind of absurdist humor. I've come around a lot on that. I never disliked it, but I think I've started to kind of grasp a lot of it. You know, when I was really young, I read Candide by Voltaire, and I kind of just really enjoyed that. And I feel like a lot of the Russian like stuff is kind of in that vein, or sometimes the French absurdist stuff. But there is also another element here at play. Sam Deegan does a commentary, and she talks a lot about, and Dennis Bartok interviews the director with the translator, and they're kind of talking about the history of Russia a little bit in here, and they're talking about that this is allegory to other things, and how, the Russian government was very controlling, and they would change, kind of morph history, and morph the events, what happened, alternative facts, that kind of sort of thing like that, to kind of change how people, by altering the how you perceive history, you can change the future, of course, and all that kind of interesting stuff here, because a lot of countries that were under authoritarian rule had to somehow get it past the censors, change things, and if it's portrayed as this absurdist, silly thing, a lot of the people that are going to be watching it or judging it under certain criteria are not going to be able to spot these kind of jabs at the government or jabs at officials and stuff like that. So there's also that interesting aspect. So in a lot of ways, a lot of these countries' films are always political, and that can be kind of a huge hurdle for people to get over, which I understand, because hell, American or Western politics are hard enough. If you're Canadian, wherever you're from, your own country's politics are hard enough to understand sometimes, let alone another country's politics that now is a period piece, basically reflecting probably something that took place 20 years before the movie actually was made. So it's all sorts of complicated stuff, but it just creates this kind of bizarre but entertaining, funny, darkly funny, and has some really wild moments. But I love the awkwardness, man. The awkwardness in this film, it's just so uncomfortable, but absolutely hilarious too. And it's really because of the performance from the lead here. As far as the special features, we have new video interview with director, co-writer Karen Shakhanazarov, moderated by Dennis Bartok of Deaf Crocodile. New audio commentary by film journalist Sam Deegan. Great commentary. New booklet essay by filmmaker, writer, punk musician, and genre expert Chris D., the Flesh Users author of Outlaw Masters of Japanese Film. So yeah, recommend this one. They listed as 88 here, but Zerograd. A really good one from Deaf Crocodile. Going to be relatively brief with this one, but I'm going to talk about Final Destination Bloodlines, the latest in the Final Destination series. This is the 6th one, and it's weird. I watch a lot of these movies when they come out initially, but when it comes to franchises, there's a point when I dipped out a lot of the franchises. So I've seen the first Final Destinations right when they came out, pretty much, and then I didn't see 4 or 5. I know 4 is pretty much notoriously hated, and I know 5 is pretty much unanimously loved. So going into this one, I definitely wanted to check out. It looked like a bigger budget, more slick kind of production than some of the other ones that I've seen. And I wanted to check out Tony Todd's last movie, of course, R.I.P. Tony Todd, the great Candyman. He plays a great Ben in Night of the Living Dead 1990. He's in the Hatchet series, Platoon, The Rock. And Tony Todd's a good actor. He has a good role in here, and it's a great send-off. So essentially what we have here is a family kind of deal here. We have this opening. It's all about the openings, right? The kind of the death look, right? You see the kind of what's the word? The premonition, the death premonition, and everything like that. And it's a doozy here. The trailer spoils a lot. I won't spoil that much, but it's kind of in a high-rise, kind of nice restaurant. It's might be the best one. It certainly is the longest one that I can remember. It takes like 20 minutes, and it's pretty cool. I feel like the effects and the budget and stuff have gone up, and I will say the acting has gone up. you know. The acting is so much better. It doesn't have that kind of, and there's nothing wrong with the early ones. I like them, but they're definitely a product of their time, and they definitely more have like a cheesier kind of tone to them, if it makes sense. Just kind of goofier, kind of sillier. The characters are a little bit more in your face, especially part two, that are absolutely ridiculous. I actually covered part two on Cut to the Chase podcast with Lacey, Lou, and Dan Chase, but I feel like I was shocked rewatching that. I was just like, man, these characters are so much goofier than I remember, so much on the nose and everything like that. So this one focuses more so on a family. So we have this girl who keeps having these premonitions, and she realizes it's got to be my grandmother that I don't know. This is her premonition. It's bloodlines, right? So she's having this premonition, and it turns out that she wants to contact her mother, her grandmother, and everything like that. Her mother's no longer in the picture. Everybody's kind of against her doing it, and she does it and finds her kind of grandmother living out in kind of isolation because she's scared of death, similar to Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween 2018 or something along those lines, right? Kind of shut in and everything, terrified of everything, but death is out to get her. So she kind of explains everything and hands over a book and explains this elaborate story of why death's coming for them and everything. I don't want to spoil it because it adds to the mythology. It's pretty cool. And after that, of course, death does come after them and starts picking off the family members and things like that. I think the deaths are more fun. It definitely does the playful thing where you think somebody's going to die here or there, and then eventually it does. You know, it throws you for a loop. You think this is going to happen, then this happens. A couple of the deaths were incredibly brutal. I think the characters are all funny. They're all likable. Even though they're dicks sometimes, I enjoyed all of them. They made me laugh. In particular, the tattoo kind of piercing guy, he's absolutely gold. He's got a lot of the best lines, and his brother's really funny too. But overall, I just like the characters. I like the kills in here. It was vastly entertaining. It was fun, but kept that kind of mean streak that Final Destinations have, and I would recommend it. I think it's one of the more fun movies I've had in the theater. I saw it in IMAX, and the sounds were great, and everything was really cool. I'd recommend it. Very, 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 very fun film. Final Destination Bloodlines. Okay, we had one here. I think these 4Ks are getting re-releases, maybe better prints or anything like that, but I was just feeling like watching something I love, something classic, and it's been years. It's been almost 20 years since I've seen this, but we're going to talk about 2007's Hot Fuzz, the 4K here. Of course, Edgar Wright, you know, the classic Cornetto trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, If World's End. We're just talking about Hot Fuzz. Maybe I'll watch another one next week. But Jeremy had never seen Hot Fuzz, so I was like, you gotta watch Hot Fuzz. So he popped it in, and of course, Hot Fuzz is a parody of the action film. It's a parody of the mystery kind of murder movies, and it's a parody of kind of cult films at the same time. I am going to spoil this, so if you haven't seen Hot Fuzz, go watch it. It's vastly enjoyable. We bring back Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright and Nick Frost all together again, the director Edgar Wright, and then the two kind of leads from Shaun of the Dead. They're fantastic. Simon Pegg is a super cop, and he's in London, and his superiors, including Bill Nighy, say, listen, you're making us look bad. We're sending you to a small town where absolutely nothing happens. Jim Broadbent is the chief. Love Jim Broadbent. Stuff like Art School Confidential, Brazil, a million movies. Really great in this. He seems like a very good-natured guy. This town's supposedly perfect, but it feels weird. There's a lot of bizarre characters, including Timothy Dalton, who played James Bond twice, as this store owner who's always saying these fucked up things like, I'm a slasher, giving him hints. Now, of course, you know Edgar Wright is really good with his editing. His editing is kind of world famous for the fast cuts, and they create a lot of comic timing. He also is somebody that sets a lot of jokes up and keeps them in repetitive nature. They play back or they call back to certain things that always get me, including jigsaw puzzle kind of deal like that. That's a jigsaw puzzle. What is the damn thing? Crossword puzzle. Really fun kind of moment with Billy Whitelaw, who's in Frenzy, and of course she's in Twisted Nerve. She's fantastic in this. There's a bunch of classic British actors that pop up in this movie that I love. Kenneth Crenshaw, I think, or Gregshaw, who plays Dr. Chenard, is in here. Paul Freeman's in here. Stuart Wilson's in here from No Escape. And we have Edward Woodward in here. We also have Peter Wright, I think his name is. He's from Naked, the Mike Leigh movie. There's tons of other people too. I feel like I'm probably missing one or two of them, but there's just a slew of classic character actors and famous actors too from Britain that pop up in here, and essentially they're all little kind of staples of this small town and everything like that. Now, Simon Pegg, there's a bunch of accidents, very violent accidents that are happening, and most of the people that are dying of accident are not the most well-liked people in this town, so Simon Pegg starts to put two to two together. He has to team up, of course, with Nick Frost, who is the chief's son, who's an idiot, but he's absolutely lovable, and they have this bromance where at first he can't stand him, but they start to bond and all these kind of things like that. And in the beginning, we are told these action tropes and seen by action tropes like Bad Boys 2 and Point Blank, and then they kind of come a reality and become absolutely hilarious, and they kind of mimic the filming techniques. There's a brilliant Western scene at the very end that is all a bunch of play call outs and everything. And the cult aspect is really cool. But everybody is perfect in the film. The action is wonderful. The special effects are great. Some of the CGI is dated, of course, but a lot of the other stuff works really well. It has shout-outs back to Shaun of the Dead and other things like that he worked on. So I can't say enough good things about Hot Fuzz. I should mention Paddy Constantine. Constantine is in here too, or is it I can't never say his name right. From Dead Man Shoes, which is a movie I love. He's great in here as one of the Andys. But everybody's fantastic in here. The comedy works really well. Have a lot of characters and a lot of established characters, surprisingly, and you remember who they all are. I think the bad guys are excellent, but they set everything up perfect, and that's something that I don't think movies do as well anymore. I think that they constantly hit you over the head with things or tell you the things, but this one is the right amount of comedy. I think it's the right amount of silliness. It's perfect. I love Hot Fuzz. I think it's probably my favorite of Edgar Wright, but I don't think I dislike anything he's ever made. I'm looking forward to his new Running Man. I love the original Running Man, and I like the book by Richard, the fake Stephen King name that he used for it. I can't remember the name he used for like 3 or 4 books, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be more close to the book, which is a really dark book. Richard Bachman was the name. Richard Bachman, is it? But it was a dark book, and the movie obviously was more like American Gladiators meets Mega Man, kind of totalitarian, authoritarian, crazy government rollerball shit. I liked the movie a lot, but it wasn't the book, and I don't know. Looking at the cast, there's people I like in the new Running Man cast, but I'm not sure if I'm that interested, but I'll go see it because it's Edgar Wright. I liked Baby Driver. I like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I love Shaun of the Dead. I love World's End. I love Last Night in Soho. I love Hot Fuzz. I'm a big fan of all his films. I think he does a great job, and I think he is one of the best directors working right now. So check out Hot Fuzz. It sounds and looks really good on 4K. The sound is actually, I think, better than the picture quality. Really good stuff. I think it's a 7.1 mix. I don't know if this is getting a re-release with better quality picture or something like that, but as I said, nice budget set if you only want the disc and everything. It's 6-disc set, 3 Blu-rays, 3 4Ks for all the movies. All right, we're going to get into those 1982 movies, and I did a rewatch. So I decided to watch Brimstone and Treacle, the new 4K from Vinegar Syndrome, and I had already watched this for 82, but I really liked it, and I wanted to see kind of the new 4K, see what they did with it. Has Delham Elliott, Joan Plowright in it, Plowright, and of course Sting. I think this is Sting's first major role, anything like that. Sting obviously was a magician, a rock artist and stuff from like The Police and everything. He went go on to do Dune, where he does a pretty good role, and he pops up. What's the other one I'm thinking he's in? I know he's in another movie that. Is he in Stormy Monday? I feel like he is in Stormy Monday. But it skips my mind. He's in The Bride from 1985, of course. But I think he's tremendous in this. Now, from my understanding, this is based on like a medieval kind of deal, medieval play or something along those lines. Well, Delham Elliott, excellent actor here, and Joan Plowright. Plowright? Is it Plowright? She's in Drowning by Numbers, great actress, the Peter Greenaway movie. But they're kind of an older married couple, and obviously they're not very happy. They have to take care of their disabled kind of daughter who's mentally not there. She screams in the night and all this kind of stuff like that. And it's obviously put a strain on their marriage, and there's a lot of underlining factors in this situation and all that kind of stuff like that. One day, you kind of learn that Sting is just obviously not necessarily, on the up and up, so he kind of fakes getting hit by Delham Elliott on the way. when he's out for work, and he ends up lifting his wallet off him, and he acts like he knows him. He kind of fishes out these things, and he kind of enters their life, and he starts to act like he was somebody that was once romantically involved with their daughter. Of course, the mother kind of believes it a little bit sooner because Delham Elliott has a tough exterior, but he's just kind of a broken individual. He's obviously depressed. He writes like these cards for these like sympathy cards for death and everything like that. But the funny thing is, he doesn't really believe in God anymore, and he has these outbursts where he's like thinking in his head that he'll scream and be like, "What a terrible thing!" He's just completely unhinged and demented in here, underlining anger and depression and things and guilt. A lot of guilt within his conscience for something that happened that we have flashbacks to and all these kind of things. And we definitely are suggesting some sort of incestuous stuff in his mind towards his daughter. But as we progress, Sting kind of moves his way in and starts to kind of manipulate them both until the climax, where it's like this kind of dark element here. Sting obviously must be kind of a metaphor for like satanic, or maybe he possibly is kind of this little kind of devilish character for sure. Maybe he is evil, all that kind of stuff like that. The ending's really great. I'm not talking about that one part of the ending. I mean the very ending, the little stinger at the end, I think is great. Sting's fantastic in here. The music's great. Sting actually did all the music for the movie as well. He didn't do the opening, but great opening credit sequence as well. But he did the music here. He acts against two kind of classic juggernauts that are really good actors, and he holds his own. I think he did a great job. I think he's a little underrated when it comes to acting. As far as Brimstone and Treacle, the picture quality looks fucking fantastic. It sounds great. And there's a Blu-ray and a 4K, of course. The special feature contains the 87-minute feature presentation of Brimstone and Treacle. I don't know if I saw the full uncut version before, but there's HDR, and we have the special features as follows. New recorded select sound audio commentary by lead actor Sting and director Richard Longcrane. Trouble Brewing, interview with director Richard Longcrane. House of the Devil, interview with production designer Millie Burns. Big Visions and Small Screens, Dennis Potter on film. Film historian John Deere and John Williams on the big screen adaptations of Dennis Potter. That's interesting, too, because they talk about his life, how he had his breakthrough, where he went, working in Hollywood, all that kind of stuff here, Dennis Potter. Also, the director and Sting talk about him a lot. Doesn't seem like the easiest guy to get along with, but obviously they respect his work and he's good. This was done, I think it's a TV version, maybe a few years later. But yeah, it's just an excellent movie, great movie, kind of a hidden gem. Not anymore now, it's on 4K. Hopefully it gets a lot of love, it deserves it. But just a great movie that I don't think a lot of people had seen in America before this release. I'm not sure if it ever had a release. Now, it's more of a psychological horror film, I would say. It's really dark and disturbing. It's not like jump scare kind of scary. It's more psychological. The special features are good. They're hard to hear, though. It's weird. It's like the British people are just more soft-spoken than us. They're not quite as loud as the Americans. But some decent information in there as well, and it's cool they got Sting and the director to talk on there. The director had a long career, did a bunch of movies, so this isn't his only kind of film here. But highly recommended. Brimstone and Treacle, one of the hidden gems of 1982. It's not one of the heavy hitters that you hear all the time, but it's one of the best. Okay, next one is another rewatch, another Vinegar Syndrome release here. They released this one too from 1982, The Ghost Dance. This is a slasher from 82, and this movie had an infamously bad VHS copy. In fact, I watched the VHS for 82, and I was like, I can't see a thing. I can't tell you if this movie's good or bad or not anything. So this is definitely a southwestern kind of native, American natives kind of inspired horror film, if you will. So what we have here is a group of outsiders, researchers, things like that are, I don't remember exactly their job, archaeologists, but they're kind of studying, anthropology and stuff like that. So they're digging up this kind of ancient site, which they shouldn't be doing really, right? And one of the kind of locals, American Indians is really pissed off about it. So essentially he goes there and he starts to kind of mess around with the site, and he is possessed by this ancient entity, this ancient kind of person, and what I can't think of the name, but he becomes kind of like a killer, and he starts to kill the people involved with the kind of digging up and everything like that. He starts killing like professors and people that work in there and anybody that gets in his way. He starts off with his wife, and in the first 15 minutes I'm like, there's a lot of kills in here, there's some decent special effects, but his main focus is of course our main character here, Kay, who is essentially kind of like leading this whole ordeal and everything like that, but there's a direct connection with them as well. I can't think of the actor's name, but there's a couple familiar American Indians in this film. I guess the term is on the commentary that Amanda Reyes says that the preferred term now is American Indians instead of Native Americans. I was raised Native American, so it's a little hard on the tongue getting used to it, but American Indians here. A couple familiar actors that you recognize right away. One of them plays kind of like the medicine man, kind of old elder guy. He's in a bunch of stuff. I can't think of his name off the top of my head. But essentially what happens is we learn that there is some maybe possible reincarnation, some kind of daughter stuff going on, and this villain is after her, and well, nothing will stop him from getting there. Of course, they have to do some kind of trickery and ancient stuff to kind of stop it. Overall, this is solid. There's a couple decent kills. I like the idea that the slasher in here is supernatural. In 1982 is a little ahead of its time. I believe the script was written in the mid 70s but didn't get made until 1980, and then eventually got released in 82 on a crummy ass VHS that no one could see. So the movie kind of got the short end of the stick. All around, it's decent. It's solid. It's better than its reputation, to be honest. Watching it, I don't think it's great, but I think that it's definitely worth watching because it looks fantastic in Blu-ray. You can see that it actually had some money, had some solid actors in it, real actors, real performances, decent score, all that kind of stuff, decent locations. I do like that kind of Southwest feel too, like Death Valley from the same year has that kind of deal. Overall, the Ghost Dance is worth watching. If you love slashers, if you love kind of American Indians kind of like lore and things like that. Newly scanned and restored in 4K from its 35 inner negative. Commentary track with genre critic and author J.A. Kurzweil and film TV historian and author Amanda Reyes. Amanda Reyes is one of the best commentators I've ever heard. J.A. Kurzweil is from Hysteria Lives. Is it Hysteria Lives or Hysteria Continues? I always say Continues. I think it's Lives. You guys know that great podcast where they talk about slasher films. Looking into the past, 25-minute interview with director Peter Buffa, co-writer director Peter Buffa. And they seem to talk about this, how it got made and all that kind of stuff, and how they got their funds, and some regrets on how they handled some certain things. This is great stuff. Interview with co-writer producer Robert M. Sutton. A Dances with Ghosts interview with stunt coordinator Don Shanks, which he played Michael Myers in, I think, part 5, if I'm not mistaken, and he's just a tough as nails stuntman. Talks about the stunt work on this movie, talks about the stunt work on other movies where he got his start, all that kind of stuff, and showing his scars on his arms. But The Ghost Dance, good movie, great release though, and some cool features as well. I got a lot out of it, and Amanda Reyes, man, she knows a lot about 1982 slasher movies, because I've been watching them all, going over them again, and she's bringing them up like that off the top of her head. Deadly Games, all that kind of stuff like that. Very interesting, very cool. But The Ghost Dance, worth watching, especially if you're a slasher completist. Great release. It's not a favorite of mine, but I definitely think it's worth watching, especially, I'll watch anything. You guys know that. Okay, this next one here is not really a horror film, but it's I guess it's horror adjacent. I just had to watch it. 1990, The Bronx Warriors by Enzo G. Castellari. That's right. Famous, director here, did Inglourious Bastards, started the post-apocalyptic Italian movies and everything like that. Now, this movie essentially is The Warriors meets Escape from New York. How can you go wrong? Italian style. Enzo G. Castellari movie. Has a bunch of familiar faces in here, including Vic Morrow, who I absolutely love. It has both, Enzo Gerlami in here, who is the director, and his brother is also in here. He pops up at Killer Crocodile, Last Shark, Tenebrae. So he's in here as well. And Mark Gregory is a star. He was not really an actor, and he was more of an artist and had a tragic end, was in these movies in the Thunder films. Did I mention Vic Morrow's fucking fantastic in this movie? He has this great line in here where they're talking about doing something. He's like, I love it. And he's like, love it. He repeats it out. It's just like, yes! Cackling at the top of his lungs like a maniac. Massimo Vanni is in here, famous stuntman, Italian stuntman. And so many people involved with it are behind the scenes, like De Angelis produced it. Salvati shot it, right? That's Fulci's guy. Now, the whole thing was, in, 1970s, I can't remember the original Mad Max came out, but the sequel, The Road Warrior, and Escape from New York, and The Warriors, and all this kind of shit was really, big in the early 80s, so the Italians, of course, hopped on that bandwagon, and in 1982, we have 1990, The Bronx Warriors. The next year that would follow, 83, there was a slew of these kind of post-apocalyptic, wild Italian kind of rip-offs, including 2019, The Fall of New York. I think that's 1983, the sequel to this, Escape from the Bronx. So this is kind of the beginning of the Italian kind of post-apocalyptic kind of rip-off kind of deal. At first, I tried to see this years ago. I never did finish the damn thing. I don't know why. But I just popped it in, and it's so cheesy and funny. It's all these gangs ruling this area and everything like that. And of course, this rich girl escapes to the Bronx, and she's like in love with Mark Gregory, who's this young guy. He's like 18, 19 when they made this movie, and he's just surrounded by a bunch of like Italian stuntmen and grizzled real bikers that they use. So it's just so awkward. But anyways, the rich girl's father, he's like a politician, evil piece of shit, and one of the Gerlami and his brother Enzo, they're both like, we got to get her back. So they send in vicious ass Vic Morrow, who had his kind of crazy little run in the early 80s of exploitation movies. 1980, Humanoids from the Deep, 1981, The Last Shark, 1982, this one, and unfortunately this year he would also die of filming The Twilight Zone. Vic Morrow, great character actor, good actor, always great. He's absolutely hilarious and crazy and full of energy in this one. But yeah, so what happens is they gotta kind of go to one part of the town and survive to ask for help from the ogre, I think his name is it ogre or whatever Fred Williamson's name is in this one, and he's great in here too. They ask for his help. They run into George fucking Eastman, so there's a lot of fights, there's a lot of shooting. The special effects are great and gory and bloody. Did Trani do the special effects in here? A classic Italian special effects artist, so they're gooey and gory and bloody. Now you're saying this doesn't really feel like a horror, but the special effects do. All the people involved with it work heavily in the horror world genre, except Enzo Castellari didn't do too many horror movies really, but I don't know if he ever did any like straight up horror movies, maybe one or something like that. I know he infamously passed on Zombie, that's why Lucio and recommended Fulci for the role. So, but this movie is just a lot of fun, really fantastic, really kind of dark, and it's also unintentionally hilarious at times in the best kind of ways, with a lot of the characters being just over the top and chewing the scenery, and just a lot of overdubbing and stuff. 1990 Bronx Warriors is a hell of a ride. I was vastly entertained, and I was just like, why did I wait so long to watch this movie? You know what I mean? I had seen parts of it. It's just never, I had it. I was like, I don't know, man. It just didn't speak to me. The first time I tried to watch this like 15 years ago, I was like, no. And I never came back to it because I'm an idiot. But yeah, I was just like, no, this is time to watch this. I think I'm going to, when I get into 83, I think I'm going to do all the Italian 1983 post-apocalyptic movies like Endgame and shit, because I love that stuff. And how can I skip? I'm not going to skip any like Fulci. I'm watching the new Gladiators, guys. I'm going to watch it again. It's because I just can't get away from it. But yeah, so yeah, as far as special features are concerned, we have audio commentary co-writer director Enzo Di Castellari, and Fabrizio Delle Angelis in Conversation Part 1, sourcing the weaponry. Of course, Castellari visits the Italian weapon rental house of Pablo Rizzi, Adventures in the Bronx, interview with actor stuntman Massimo Vanni. So a bunch of people involved with this. Highly recommended. Fun movie. It looks really good. Looks gritty as shit. Yeah, love that stuff. Love the Italian movie shot in New York and in the cities like that. Good stuff. Okay, this one here is more of a psychological thriller. This is Pool Without Waters, and this is Koji Wakamatsu, who directed stuff like Violated Angels, and he was making kind of crazy exploitation kind of art films in the late 60s all the way, and obviously into the 80s, but he's got a huge library of kind of fucked up wild movies. Violated Angels is the Richard Speck story, really intense movie, and Pool Without Water is no different. Very intense stuff here. So we have here is this kind of guy, he has a wife and kids, he's just punches tickets at the kind of the subway. Doesn't talk very much, just seems like a loner, isolated, unhinged, completely unhinged kind of subject of society, kind of like Travis from Taxi Driver along that vein. We don't really get much of his inner monologue, but we kind of see what he does and how and whatnot. He gets this idea to chloroform, from a frog being chloroformed, to kind of start to kind of follow women home, in particular one waitress at a diner who he takes an infatuation with. So this whole thing is kind of like triggered because he stops these two guys from raping this woman in this like big rainstorm, which is very common in these Japanese movies at the time. They always end like a couple of the Nakatsu, one of the Nakatsu movies ends like that, and then one of the other Japanese kind of extreme movies ends like that this year, where there's like some woman raped in the rain, and he stops a rape scene. I think one of the Angel Guts movies almost has an attempted rape in the rain. He stops this rape scene from these two guys raping this woman, and ends up going back with her, and she kind of gives him a nice coat and everything like that. And later, like he seems like, oh, is this kind of what's this guy's deal? And it reminds me of Edmund Kemper. This movie surprisingly has so many. The main character in here has a lot of similarities to like serial killers and stuff like that, like Dennis Rader, who wasn't caught yet. So it's just like, wow, it's so weird that idea, like he's obsessed with taking these pictures and stuff like that and keeping the pictures. And a lot of serial killers do take pictures of their victims. But the Edmund Kemper thing where he would basically like help somebody and then let somebody go and then kill the next person. It's just like completely random. So he goes back with this woman and he's nice to her. And then that night he breaks into her house and just says, listen, you should be more careful. I could have done this. And she's just okay with it. It's like, this is so fucking weird. But he gets his eye on this girl at the diner and he starts to stalk her and he starts to break into her house and chloroform her and rape her. And we have like a bunch of these rape scenes and he becomes infatuated. He starts to do it all over the place. And he's just kind of ignoring his family duties and he's starting to lose his mind completely. And as he gets more comfortable doing it, you know it's not going to end well. But yeah, this is just a real weird character study, psychological thing. It's shot really well. It has cool locations. Just an interesting but nasty, dark little movie. I would recommend if it sounds like it's up your alley. He's kind of looks at like these fucked up characters. You know, Mosquito the Rapist is another one like that. There's so many of these that I watch that I really like. That it's just kind of a look at somebody who's mentally unstable or on the verge of snapping in society and stuff like that. And Pool Without Waters. That's a crazy one. It's a wild, weird movie. It's not necessarily a horror film, but I definitely think it's a horror adjacent, especially because the director has such a big name and stuff, and it just has such a dark kind of subject matter. Okay, the next one here is a Spanish kind of slasher psychological movie here, Written in the Fog. And this follows kind of this young man. He's a kid at a very young age, and Antonio Mayans is about to sleep with his mother. He doesn't like this. He goes in and he shoots this guy, and his mother is catatonic after that, throws the gun in her hand and says, you did it. So we kind of fast forward to, you know, him being an adult, and he's running this kind of like little bar hotel kind of deal, is from my understanding, or like and whatnot, and his mother's in the home. He gets his mother out. She's catatonic still, and he's madly obsessed with her, madly kind of in love with his mother, and he starts to hire these kind of people to help him around the bar, and every time they say something sexual or every time they do something he doesn't like, he kind of snaps and kills them. We have some missing people. The cops start to get involved, and that's kind of the story here, where he keeps going back to his mother. He actually ties one up in the basement and kind of interrogates her and talks to her all this time. I used AI subtitles. They were pretty good on this one. Spanish and everything translates pretty well for those. But yeah, it's just kind of a crazy character study. The picture quality's not great. The performance of the lead guy is decent. He's not a very likable guy, obviously, and he's kind of the mama's boy kind of Norman Bates kind of style thing, just darker and grosser. It does kind of remind me a little bit of that movie Trauma that Vinegar Syndrome put out on Blu-ray, although I like Trauma a little better. Overall, this one's decent. It's not great. There's a couple moments that are a little bit shocking for the time, especially kind of a shot of a woman who's been strangled. She's naked in the basement. I was like, oh, it's a little kind of crazy for this movie, and considering how tame it kind of felt at times. But there is some nudity and stuff and some really kind of dark stuff. But Written in a Fog, worth watching if you're into kind of psychological horror thriller slasher kind of style things. Okay, we have another Indonesian flick here, and this is Long-Haired Grandmother. It has a bunch of other names as well. Now, the AI subtitles on this were absolute crap, so bear with me, and this is probably going to be one of the last kind of AI subtitle movies I watch because of it. But what we have in the very beginning is this kind of old, like, grandma thing. Like, she looks really messed up. She kind of rises out, and she goes and sucks the blood of a baby, and it gets all dark and weird. And then we're dealing with that, right, where this person is really incredibly sick, but a lot of the film is like them arguing about if she's going to be able to marry this person, I want to marry this person, all that kind of stuff like that. So that's a huge part of the film, and we have this kind of family dynamic between, as far as I can tell, between these group of peoples, and there's these elaborate kind of fight scenes where a bunch of them die. At the very end, we have this big kind of magic fight-off, right, where we have the long-haired grandmother come back, who seems to have some sort of like special name, like she's kind of an old kind of myth or tale of this village, and we have our magic off, our big magic Indonesian horror fight. Overall, this one has a couple cool moments, but it becomes tedious, obviously, because it's not really subtitled well, because it's probably an abridged version, all that kind of stuff like that. But I did read a couple of people thought the opening was incredibly scary, and I do think it's effective, but I don't think it's as well done as a lot of the other Indonesian horror films, but the picture quality is not great. But I mean, in a country that you have stuff like Satan's Slave and Mystics in Bali and stuff like that, there's a lot better to offer, but long-haired grandmother is okay. Okay, the Patreon pick here is Your Name from 2016. This is an anime movie, and I was not familiar with the source material. I had not really heard about this one. This is kind of a blind spot for me. So I do like my animation. 2016 is not really necessarily my strong point, but I'm willing to give anything a chance. So I put this in, and this was pretty good. In the very beginning, we have this kind of like meteor shower going through the clouds, and then kind of one just makes it in the atmosphere, and you're like, okay, this is a good setup. And we have these kind of two characters narrating over it, a boy and a girl around the same age, I think 17, 18 years old. And they're starting to have these strange dreams and whatnot. And they come to realize that when they go to sleep, they're in this, they wake up and they're in the other person's body, in their consciousness, right? So we have a body flop movie. One is from the city, one is from the country. So they have all these kind of weird things kind of like that. And they start to change these people's, how people perceive them, of course, because, right, at first it's kind of a fish out of water, kind of funny story, like you were acting really weird the other day. But then over time, loves blossom, relationships blossom, and these two have never really seen each other. Through the halfway point, we kind of realize there's kind of a big kind of twist here, which I don't want to spoil, and I thought that was vastly interesting. I guess I'll talk a little bit more about it, and then I'll talk about the spoilers. So I like the idea of the switching bodies, of the having to live the other person's life, and it's really cute and clever in a lot of different ways and stuff like that. But that switch really helps it. It ends up being kind of really sad in a lot of ways, and bittersweet, and that idea that life is maybe more interesting and deep than you actually think it is a nice thought to have. But overall, I really like this. Without getting into spoilers, I would recommend that. Good characters, good twist, good writing, and that idea that changing things and stuff like that I like. But now I'm going to spoil this. So here we go. So it is a time travel movie at the same time, right? Because we realize that one of the characters is actually 2 years ahead of the other character, and this person that they're body swapping with is from the same small town that was absolutely destroyed by that meteor that hit in the beginning. So what we have here is this idea that we have flashbacks where they had met each other at one point, and this necklace and stuff is a major factor, which becomes something so much more important and touching. There's a brilliant scene in here where the character is drawing the landscape because he's trying to find the place to save this person or meet this person, and he draws this village that he can see, and somebody in this restaurant says, "Oh, I know that village, I grew up there. It's the place that blew up, that got hit by the meteor." And it's so weird and just fucked up, right? That's a great rendition of it. And you realize that the person that you're trying to find, the person that may be your soulmate, the person that you love, is already gone. And it goes into this whole idea that there's some sort of magic mysticism within it, and maybe you could change time and things like that. But I like this. It's cool because it makes life seem like, and when you wake up, you kind of forget the dream and you try to write it on your hands, and this interactions and things like that. Like, people, I think, feel like there's something missing out of their lives a lot of times, and they try to complicate things and believe things that it possibly couldn't be true to make their life more interesting. But what if it was? What if life was different? What if there was a dream world? What if, you were having this second life when you close your eyes, and there's somebody out there that's exactly thinking the same thing, and you share these moments and you share this bond, and you don't even know him. It's just kind of like a what if kind of thing there to think about and dive deep into it, to make life a little bit more special than what it is, to make life a little bit more interesting than what it is. And it's one of those stories, one of those kind of life things, that magic world of dreams, which is the possibilities are endless in that kind of aspect. And I like that. It just opens up your horizons. It makes it very intense and very sweet and very loving, and it's just an emotional movie. Your Name, I would recommend it. The animation's fantastic. The sound's great. Just really recommend this one. Check it out. I don't know too much about this director, but he seems to have a good reputation for making these animes that people like and everything like that. And the story's great, but Your Name, check it out. It's good stuff. Alright, we ain't got very many questions and comments this week, but let's get into them. Nick Moore from Belgium. Clown in the Cornfield seems worthy of a watch, though I still don't get, and probably never will, why Americans are so fascinated with and scared of clowns. It's all Mr. King's fault, if the Clowns Association of America is to be believed. Damn you, Stephen. I would also say John Wayne Gacy had a little bit to do with that. There's a lot of that element there, John Wayne Gacy, and clowns are fucking creepy, man. They're always smiling, they're always playing jokes and weird, and even backdating to, the circus, all sorts of weird shit. Silent movies. Clowns are weird, man. But John Wayne Gacy has a big problem with that, and of course Stephen King's it. I feel recent comedies are afraid to offend people, well, certain people. This has resulted in the genre losing its spark a lot. Fortunately, we'll always have classics like 1968's The Party or Ghostbusters, or dare I say, the first two American Pie movies. 1. Who is the scariest cinematic clown according to you? That's going to be weird, but it's got to be Pennywise. I know the movie is not great and dated, but that's the clown. That's the only clown that scared the shit out of me growing up, but it was the product of its time for me. Have you seen all the Final Destination flicks? If so, which is your favorite, or is the whole series not to your liking at all? The ones I've seen, I've liked all of them. 3 is my least favorite. I've only seen the first 3 and the last one. But you see what I'm saying here? So, I mean, I really like that new one, but I haven't watched 4 or 5, so I do like what I've seen, though. Were you shocked at all when learning that Bully was based on a true story? I sure was when I first saw it 24 years ago. No, not at all. But I was a little shocked at the very ending when we go through the end credits, right? That's a little shocking. But love that movie. See you next week, God willing. Your name here. Nothing should be off limits in comedy. Culture that forgets that is a fallen one. Yeah. And basically, here's what I'm going to say about that. I do agree to a certain extent. Yeah, I do agree. I don't believe in censorship. I don't believe in that kind of stuff. But the thing about crazy or offensive wild comedy is if you're not clever, if you don't do it the right way, it becomes embarrassing. And if you're embarrassing, people are going to dogpile on you because it's, it's easy pickings. But there's certain comedians I feel can get away with anything. You can get away with murder, right? But also at the same time, there was a whole pushback of like real hack shit comedians who are like, yeah, I'm a comedian. F this, F that. And they just come out and just be over the top. And it's not clever. It's not funny. It's not my type of humor. I mean, it's kind of like extreme movies, right? If a movie has extreme shit, it doesn't bother me as long as it's a good movie. I mean, cool, man, that's awesome. Just get extreme, like The Sadness or Cannibal Holocaust. Like this movie, I feel like it uses its extremity to its impact, right? And I feel that comedy too. Sometimes you shock them, but if you bring them back, it's an art form to a comedy or a comedian. And there's a lot of hacks out there that just go out and say the most offensive shit and say, yeah, I'm a comedian. And it's just like they want more attention than to make a laugh, make a joke. That's just the way I feel about it. Tunnel Vision, written by Neil Israel, who would go on to do Police Academy, Bachelor Party, Look Who's Talking, Real Genius, and more. Oh, yeah. Of course, I forgot to mention he did Bachelor Party. And the special features on Tunnel Vision, he talks about, he's like, the studio's telling you got to make these movies more for people, for the broader audience. He's like, that kind of hurt me, I think, instead of just making the movies for my fan base and stuff like that. So, mentions that. Nice information there. Thank you for the, I want to make sure I say that, Hoik. Hoik. Thank you for the compliments on my Tunnel Vision commentary track. For the record, my name is pronounced Hoik. But don't worry, everybody stumbles on it the first time. Good job, man. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for making good commentary. And he says that your name here pops up again and says, it's hard to say their name. And he said, not if they watch Beat the Geeks. And he replies, not enough people watch Beat the Geeks. That's why I don't have any name recognition. I did watch Beat the Geeks, but remind you, I watched that when it broadcasted. I do not remember all the people on the show's names, unfortunately. But great commentary nonetheless. And I did enjoy Beat the Geeks. It's just been forever. Spasmatic, just got my copy of Steppenwolf over the weekend. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for the reminder that Goliath came with Steppenwolf. I forgot about that one. It's really good too. Indie Phantoms of Cinema. Love the 82 series. Excited for what is next. What's next is Amityville 2 Possession. Then after that, Death Screams. Ilk Vomit. Nick Castle also directed the 90s Dennis the Menace movie. That he did. Stephen Cowie Walker was a surprise after his previous effort, Straight to Hell, certainly. He says, it's like come and see. Sold. Quoting me. Yeah. I feel like it has aspects of it. Way Up Dude gives me the hand piece. Thank you. Saint 3188. I saw Clown in the Cornfield and personally thought it was average. I also saw Final Destination Bloodlines and it was awesome. Yeah, I thought Clown in the Cornfield was decent. Final Destination Bloodlines, awesome. I agree. Ken Coakley. I saw Tunnel Vision a long time ago, back in the 70s. Sketch comedy films were pretty popular. Before Tunnel Vision, Chevy Chase appeared in 1973 film The Groove Tube, which also featured Richard Belzer, Martin Cove, and was written, directed, and starred Ken Shapiro, who directed Chevy Chase again in the 1981 comedy Modern Problems. The Groove Tube had a hilarious skit of a guy who looked like a prototype of Krusty the Clown hitchhiking and being picked up by a beautiful woman, with Move On Up by Curtis Mayfield playing in the background. Tunnel Vision also featured Al Franken and Tom Davis. Of course, Al Franken's in the pool skit, who at the time were writers and small players on SNL. Franken was a senator from Minnesota who had to resign after being photographed groping a sleeping Leanne Tweeden. I remember that. Before Tunnel Vision, Howard Essman had a fairly sizable role in 1971 film Billy Jack. He was a total hippie in the film. 3 of the announcers were familiar to me. The first announcer did voiceover for ABC commercials. The second did voiceovers for Disney films. And the third guy was screaming Don Steele from Death Race 2000, Rock and Roll High School, among others. I didn't even recognize that was Don Steele's voice. That's crazy. What's the matter? What's that line he's got in Eating Roll? What's the matter? You squares or you got VD? I saw Groove Tube in 1981 at the drive-in with another comedy skit movie, Kentucky Fried Movie. It was a triple bill with Dawn of the Dead. Dawn stood out as the lone horror film. Airplane was originally going to be Kentucky Fried sequel, but it would have made moviegoers think it was going to be another sketch comedy movie. The Zuckers made another sketch comedy called Amazon Woman on the Moon. I saw another sketch comedy double feature in 79. The first one was called If You Don't Stop It, You'll Go Blind. With its sequel, I Could Do It Till I Need Glasses. The reason I wanted to go was because it was Robin Williams' big screen debut, and he was very popular because of the show. Mork and Mindy. There we go. Let's do the update really quick. It's not that many movies, but it's quality over quantity this time around. We got 2 Jean Roland movies. We got The Iron Rose and the Deluxe 4K edition here. And we have Girls Without Shame, a.k.a. Schoolgirl Hitchhikers. There we go. Yeah, so gotta love these cool Jean Roland movies. Directed by Michel Gentel. Ooh, geez, why did I think this was involved with Jean Roland? I could have swore he directed it. Oh, directed by Jean Roland under the pseudonym Michel Gentil. Yeah, that name sounds fake as shit. I could have swore it was. Yeah, so I never actually saw Girls Without Shame or Schoolgirl Hitchhikers, but I've seen Iron Rose, of course. But this is not one of his horror films. But I've been picking these up, and they look glorious from my understanding, and they're nice, heavy releases here. But yeah, let's get out of here. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.